Because we're living in a virtual reality world, everybody. We don't see images from space. We see computer versions of images from space. You know, we're all being diverted by other things like trials on television. So the news, the real news, is not getting through. But in the summer of 1993, 1 month before Mars Observer disappears, and a little while before the Hubble was to be fixed, all right, a few months before that magic December date, a federal employee was found shot to death in a roadside rest just outside Washington, D.C. Now, you think I'm talking about Mr. Foster, don't you?
No.
This man was a 8-year computer veteran who worked for the Hubble Telescope Institute. And 2 days before Vince Foster was found in a roadside rest, dead, with a large handgun in his hand, this NASA scientist, computer expert, was found a few miles away, also in a roadside rest, dead, with a large handgun in his hand. How many people commit suicide with large handguns in roads? Well, let me just tell you the facts, and you can draw your own conclusion. You begin to add up these inconsistencies, and it gets a little weird. Then we have this death. Now, I didn't say it was a murder. I said he was found, in a roadside rest a few miles from Washington in Maryland, 2 days before Vince Foster is found under identical circumstances, by the way. And when I discovered that this guy had worked for Hubble for 8 years and he was a computer expert, you got to imagine how I felt. Because initially there was going to be an inquest. And 1 day later the inquest was overruled. And suddenly there was no inquest and it was ruled a suicide. But there was no inquiry. And the state police, the Maryland State Police, basically are not answering any questions. And it has all the earmarks of the feds moving in and basically taking control. And I have tried quietly to get investigators, former police people and whatever, to put some time on this one, and nobody seems to be interested. This man had been missing, by the way, for a week. He was found at the other end of the state from the Institute, all right? His car was found in the roadside rest by the state cops initially, and then they found his body a short way off into the woods. His wife reported him missing on a Monday. He was not found until Friday. Vince Foster was found on Monday or Tuesday, I think, all right? So he was murdered or he killed himself a few days before, but this is really weird. Do people who are going to go and commit suicide make Ready-Teller withdrawals during the week from their Ready-Teller when they don't come home?
No.
And he did. And the way I reconstruct it again in scenario is that if he wasn't the culprit, maybe he found that there was a problem. Maybe as an expert, as a veteran, he discovered as part of the getting ready for the fix that there was a computer program that didn't really belong in those computers. You mean, how do we prove this?
No, I mean, why haven't they killed you?
Because I'm not an expert working for Hubble. I don't have the smoking gun. I don't have the program in front of me. I cannot prove this is a hypothesis, all right? This man, with his expertise, if he was trying to hot dog it or James Bond it, all right?
Right.
Maybe he was set up. Maybe he tried to launch an investigation. Maybe he tried to get hold of somebody at Justice. We can play all kinds of scenario games. The fact is, he wound up at the other end of the state in a roadside rest, which is an ideal place, by the way, to pass information to somebody. How many times have you driven by a roadside rest? You guys out there on the road tonight, when you come up on your next roadside rest, look to the side, in your mirror, out that window, and just ask yourself, what's going on out there that you don't know about?
That's right. Be a good meeting spot, sure.
Oh, nobody cares. Nobody gives a second thought. It's the perfect place for the anonymity to meet and talk and pass information. Was he set up? We'll never know unless someone investigates. What is stunning is that 2 days later, a major senior White House counselor and friend of the President of the United States and the First Lady winds up dead in a roadside rest a few miles away under identical circumstances. That I find really interesting because statistically, we want to get into statistics, how many people commit suicide in the United States every day? How many in a year? How many decide to take a large handgun and blow their brains out on a roadside rest a few miles from each other?
Was this alleged suicide also by handgun?
Yes.
It was?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe the two are tied together?
Only that both were federal employees. They were 2 days apart, 3 days apart. They were a few miles apart. And the statistics of that kind of suicide is so rare. I mean, you can go through the police blotters and you'll find that people don't do that. And to have it happen within a couple of days right next door to each other and both of them work for the federal government, and one of them works for Hubble, given the time frame, I'm more than casually. Now here's where things get really weird. You know what kind of spacecraft they're going to send the rover to Mars in?
What?
A tetrahedral-shaped spacecraft.
Really?
Really. And when it lands under retro rockets and parachutes on the surface, the petals of the tetrahedron will fall down, and the little rover will trundle down the ramp formed by one of the tetrahedron sides. Isn't this cute? Don't you love this government? Wouldn't you like to get control again, guys?
What I would like to ask you is what all that means.
Well, it means that somebody knows, and they're basically sticking it to us, but good. I mean, the idea that this can be all coincidence. Remember, we're dealing with a political problem, much like talking about the mafia. NASA is a family, Art. And a family that has basically got all their jobs and their reputation on the line. There are people in NASA that I know, if I could prove to them incontrovertibly tomorrow that NASA has been lying to all the rest of us,
wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter, and I'll tell you why. Because pride of NASA and the health of the agency and defense against the retribution of angry American people in the Congress will be more important to them than the truth.
All right, so for the purpose of this discussion, Richard, for the purpose of this discussion, I'm willing to forget NASA and accept what you say about them.
But we do have key people who held key positions who were, and remember, we've just begun this process. It's only been a month since we got this major breakthrough.
So if the Hubble Space Telescope were to be taken down, then all this exciting run of discoveries, all these advances that we're making just would stop. The Hubble Space Telescope has been tremendous to advance our knowledge of the universe, to find out about the dark matter. It really discovered dark energy. And so without that, we wouldn't be anywhere. Great.
So the Hubble is what discovered and mapped out dark matter.
Yes.
We're living in a virtual reality world, everybody. We don't see images from space. We see computer versions of images from space.
So, the technique that we use to look at this background wallpaper of galaxies on the sky really requires the Hubble Space Telescope to be done. Just because you need to look at very, very distant, very faint galaxies. And if you look through the Earth's atmosphere, then they're all blurred out and smudgy. You just can't see them, the galaxies which are far away. We need them to be far away because they have to be behind any of the dark matter that we're looking at. So you can really only do this from space, and the Hubble was crucial in doing this.
We're living in a virtual reality world, everybody. We don't see images from space. We see computer versions of images from space.
Is the Hubble, Professor, going to be... once it's repaired, you would know more about what they're going to do than I certainly would. Is it going to be that much better when it's repaired and updated? And if so, what might we do with it that we have not yet done?
So there are a few new experiments or cameras being put onto the Hubble Space Telescope, and the problem with it was really the timing, at least from the perspective of dark matter.